on matters election. Now over to DRC, where the Democratic Republic of Congo has announced that much delayed elections to replace President Joseph Kabila will take place in December 2018. But the opposition demanded the longtime leader to step down sooner. Elections were due to take place this year, and a deal whereby Kabila will leave office, but repeated wrangling has hobbled the process. The Election Commission said, quote-unquote, direct voting will take place on December 23rd, 2018, covering presidential, legislative, regional and local elections. That is according to the Independent National Electoral Commission official Jean-Pierre Kalamba. But the Congolese opposition said the time frame was not acceptable, insisting that Kabila quits by the end of this year.
The time frame we are announcing today sets the election for one day. So the presidential, general and provincial elections will happen on the same day in December 2018. Now is the time to call on all parties to avoid doing anything that might lead to stalling of this new calendar. Everyone's responsibility is on the line. Sunday, the 23rd of December, all voting will be combined in one day, the presidential, general and provincial.
Over to some interesting development down south, and in Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe has fired his deputy Emmerson Mnangagwa, who has been fighting disloyalty claims. Now, a statement from the Ministry of Information stated that the 75-year-old Vice President Mnangagwa has been removed from his post because he displayed what they termed as traits of disloyalty. His removal makes it more likely that President Robert Mugabe's wife, Grace, will follow in her husband's footsteps as leader of Zimbabwe. Now, she had earlier called on her husband to remove his vice president. Mnangagwa, former intelligence chief, had been leading a candidate to succeed President Mugabe.
Swear that I will be faithful and pay true allegiance to Zimbabwe and observe the laws of Zimbabwe. So help me God.
It is the President's pleasure to introduce new blood into cabinet, and as he said himself, he has been looking at us and our performance, and in some areas he has indicated that the performance was not up to his expectation. And as a result of that, he has done the reshuffle. We expect that each cabinet which is set up will do its best to move the economy forward, move the country forward. That is what is expected.
Of course, a very interesting development there in Zimbabwe. Remember, even as the succession politics continues, Robert Mugabe, who is 94 now, is expected to defend his seat in next year's poll there. Now, over to Uganda, where Ugandan doctors have begun an indefinite strike at all government facilities, despite a reported threat to jail striking medics. Now, the country's doctors are protesting poor pay, a lack of medical equipment, and what they say are the arbitrary arrest of their colleagues accused of corruption. Uganda's Prime Minister, Ruhakana Rugunda, met with organizers to urge them to call off the walkout while the government looked into their demands. However, his request was shot down with boos. Last week, President Yoweri Museveni said he will call a state of emergency should the strike go ahead. The Uganda Medical Association said he also threatened to arrest the striking doctors, although the president's press secretary denied this.
When the rest of Uganda was celebrating independence, the doctor said, not yet Uhuru. We have not seen that socio-economic freedom that we all want to achieve as Ugandans. And we decided that by today, if the government of Uganda has not responded to what we requested for, to what we demanded, which should have happened yesterday, then enough is there. Yeah. And industrial action started this morning at midnight.
This exercise of looking at your terms of service is being handled by a team. And this team is supposed to be making a report to Cabinet by the end of this very month.
And just to give us details of these doctors' strike in Uganda, it seems they also have the similar problem with Kenya, because we also had, problems with the doctors' strike. The nurses' strike was just resolved the other day. I'm now joined live by my colleague from Kampala, Uganda, Solomon Serewanja, who is at this hour live and is on standby with Dr. Ekwaru Obuku. He's the chairman of the Uganda Medical Association. Good evening, Serewanja.
Well, a very good evening to you, but not a very good one from Uganda, because Uganda could bleed in the next coming days, Yusufu. And of course, some fatalities could be registered in the coming weeks or so, following the industrial action that was called by over 6,000 medical officers and doctors working across the country and beyond under their association, the Uganda Medical Association. They have their demands, but government, they say, has given them a deaf ear. Well, joining us on Bottom Line Africa is Dr. Ekwaru Obuku, who is joining us from the Uganda Medical Association. Good to have you on Bottom Line Africa. Let's start off, Doctor, with what are your demands? What are those specific demands that you're pushing for as an association?
First of all, good evening, viewers, Bottom Line Africa, and thank you so much, Serewanja, for inviting us here tonight to share with the rest of Africa the key issues affecting not only Uganda, but also other African countries. We need to emancipate Africa, and we should do this, sharing lessons from different countries. I wanted to clarify that Uganda is not going to bleed, because as doctors, we are very responsible. We have said that we are going to keep emergency services open, and even other cases which may not be emergency but need to be reviewed, we'll attend to them.
And yet you will not attend to cold cases?
We are cold cases just means it's not an emergency. You're not going to die immediately. We are also following the international recommended guidelines of the World Medical Association, where obviously our utmost consideration is the patient. So what we are doing, in fact, is to speak on behalf of patients and the common man, that what is bleeding is the health sector. We are not the ones causing the bleeding. We actually want to arrest the bleeding by alerting the decision makers in this country that there is a problem, and we want to formalize that process.
One of the issues that you highlight is emoluments or remuneration, so to speak. What exactly do you want? Seems like you're asking for too much. If you can take us through, what are those issues that you're pushing for as an association?
The downfall of asking for remuneration is that it makes the news. But I want to tell you, our key issue is around the quality of healthcare accessed by the common Ugandan. Poverty can also be defined as the inability to access healthcare by the common Ugandan. And that poverty gap is widening. We need to invest in the health sector as a country to reduce poverty in terms of accessing healthcare, which affects the Human Development Index. The second issue that we are addressing is the wanton arrests of doctors by a unit which is not well constituted in terms of the professionals who exist there. We have the Uganda Medical and Dental Practitioners Council, which has been existing for over 20 years, with highly qualified professionals, but not well facilitated. And we are persuading the president that he can marry the two or shut down the health monitoring unit and strengthen the medical council. The third issue is around remuneration. And what we are asking for are competitive market rates, which the president agreed with us that he has been persuading his bureaucrats to adjust the remuneration of doctors to be, first of all, different from other health workers and scientists, also from other civil servants and scientists, basing on the Uganda Public Service Job Evaluation Report, which ranked doctors as the highest. We are also saying that the rates compared to GDP of Uganda should be as competitive as our neighbors in terms of valuing the doctor in society.
Well, just for clarification for our African audience now, doctors here are pushing that, for example, intern doctors, their salaries need to be increased from 960,000 to about 13 million shillings, Ugandan shillings. Medical officers or teaching assistants, their emolument to be moved to 15 million shillings, including a 2-bedroomed house and a car worth 2.5 cc's. A senior consultant doctor or professor should be earning 48 million shillings plus allowances, accompanied by a 5-bedroomed house and a vehicle 4,000 cc's and 3 domestic workers. Is this realistic?
One, I must say that issues to do with housing, domestic workers, and vehicles are already provided for in the appointment letters of the senior consultants. However, they don't get this, and we are saying, can this be changed? Because we are seeing members of parliament, other senior civil servants receiving these packages. But the senior consultant doctor, who was ranked much higher than many of these public servants who are bureaucrats, sits on desk and push paper, are not receiving it, simply because we are not placed near the source of money. We are busy in theater, saving lives, operating pregnant mothers, and nobody is talking on our behalf. Looking at the amounts of money, I can guarantee you a member of parliament in Uganda is earning about $8,000. A senior consultant whose qualification is over 20 years of job experience and 20 years of academic investment after university earns $800. When you know the qualification of a member of parliament minimum is a senior A-level secondary education. That is it. So where is the equity? This is what we're talking about.
So let me ask you, you've said that the country will not bleed well. We saw it in Kenya during the strike. More than 100 days of doctors' strikes. Just recently, the nurses just returned to work. There are lives that were lost in Kenya. And I'm sure there are going to be lives that are going to be lost here in Uganda. What does this strike mean for you?
Let me say 3 things. One, contexts are different. The Kenyan strike, the Kenyan doctors went all out without even emergency services. They withdrew each and every service available. Okay? Now, the second thing is that we are not withdrawing emergency services. We are providing for emergency services by doctors. We are talking about accident victims. We're talking about pregnant mothers in need of emergency cesarean section. We're talking about children with acute conditions like asthma, etc., or severe malaria and need the intervention of a doctor. The third thing I wanted to interest viewers and persons who are able to find this research is that research has been done globally to show that actually when doctors go on strike, the number of people who die either reduces or remains the same. Why is this the case? Because when we strike, we organize our manpower such that we take care of the emergencies and leave the cold cases. But finally, the reason we are going on industrial action is because we have found that there is no difference between going on industrial action and not going on industrial action in terms of deaths. The people who are dying in our hands, because we are not empowered to save their lives. Let me finish. Because we are not empowered to save their lives is traumatizing us. And as leaders in the sector, we are saying, can we reverse this situation? Can we support the government to realize these objectives and these priorities for the Ugandans?
You've raised these issues. In fact, you met the president recently. Yes. Do you think this government is not giving you an ear?
What happened is that these things have been chronic, and we decided to engage the state. For over a year, we presented a petition to Parliament, but it gathered dust until an honorable member of Parliament passed away under pregnancy-related condition. And this was very sad because we thought as a profession we could have saved the situation. But because the health system is so weak, then you find that even you and me, who think we have escaped the pangs of the weak health system, are caught in this web. And what we are saying is, government has not listened to us. We started a conversation with the president, but we didn't conclude it, and we want to go ahead. However, we had just passed the deadline of today, and the General Assembly of Doctors said, fine, let's continue talking to the state, but at the same time, we institute the level 1 of industrial action.
Dr. Buku, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rama.
Well, according to Dr. Buku, the health sector is going through a chronic illness that can only be treated if their views are heard and if their salaries are actually revisited. Well, we'll be closely following that story for you in Uganda just to look at whether indeed the health sector will not bleed. Now, we've had other East African countries go on strike. In Kenya, lives were lost, and of course, doctors still maintain their grounds that their salaries need to be, well, increased. But how would that play out? We'll be closely watching from Uganda. Back to you, Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Sarawanja, for that update. That was my colleague Solomon Sarawanja coming to us all the way from Kampala, Uganda. And that update on the medic strike in Uganda, agitating for more pay, takes us to a very short break. But when we come back, we'll have a studio discussion which will revolve around the threats or intimidation civil society is saying they're receiving from the NGO board. We're also going to talk in detail about the Supreme Court, where, all attention is focused on, even as we count less than an hour and a half before the registry there closes its doors for the petitions, challenging the election.